Good morning or afternoon to all the viewers today. So I'm Jean-Paul Tsotsos. I am the interim CEO of Chesapeake Gold, recently appointed earlier this month. And I'm happy to give you guys an overview of what we've been doing over the past year and what's coming up in the coming year as we draw to the end of 2023. So before I begin, there's obviously some cautionary notes here. I'll be making several forward-looking statements. So make sure while you read this and while you go through the notes here, that if you are to make a decision, make sure you talk to your investor or your broker to, make sure you're well aware of all of the risks. So to begin, here's the kind of the investment highlights for Chesapeake. That's really a double story here. We have this new oxide gold discovery at Lucy and Sinaloa. Just earlier in October, we put out our first set of drill results out of there. One hole, we had about 6 grams per ton of gold over 24 meters right from surface. And then we had several holes over 500 meter zone, also getting good hits. I'll be going through that a little bit more detail and talking about the future of Lucy. On Metates is really a reinvented story. It's been around for several years. It started off back in the day with Lucy Min and then with Cambior, and eventually Randy and Rifle and his team got a hold of the property. And as many of you know, back in 2020, Alan and his team came in with a technology that takes a different view of Metates and how we can extract the gold that's in the deposit and do it in a way that's more economic and gets more benefits right from the rock from the get-go. And additionally, it also provides a lot of environmental benefits too, which I'll go through. The next is, we're working in a favorable jurisdiction, obviously Mexico. We're well funded with $22 million in the treasury. We generally have a low burn rate with our cash. On average, it's about $5 million a year. So we've got a good run rate here with the cash on hand. And then we have large supportive shareholders with Eric Sprott at 13%. We have Alan at the past CEO at 11%, Sun Valley about 10.5%, and then our management, Randy's about 7%, and then the rest altogether makes up about 40% equity interest in Chesapeake. Really compelling valuation. It's a good opportunity for people that are looking to get in and get exposure to gold and get exposure to our technology and the future of this company. It's a really good opportunity. So I'm going to start off with Lucy. So we put out a press release last month. The market was quite excited about these results. It's in Sinaloa. I had the opportunity to fly there late in October and have a view from the sky. I haven't put boots on the ground yet, but my intention is to go down there and actually get to look at the rocks and visit the actual outcrops and the trenches that have been done so far. My past is actually as a geologist, so getting to see the rocks is really meaningful to me, and it helps me to tell you guys the story and show you the potential that's there. But you can see here on the maps that our team did in Mexico, we have several trenches over the property, a lot of them across skarn. 3 trenches that we went back and followed up on was Trench 3, which was 2 grams gold, Trench 8, which was 3.5 grams, and then Trench 10 at 4 grams. And these were all trenches that were done back in 2020 and 2021. And then we've gone back now, 2021 and 2022, but we've gone back now and we've drilled under these trenches. And most of the results here from the drilling reflect not only what we've seen at surface, but also what's underground. So like I already mentioned, the best hole was hole 6. That would be on the far east side of the image on the bottom left corner. So we got about 24 meters of 6 grams. And then on the far west side of this image, we have hole 13, which was 24 meters of about 4 grams. In the individual holes, certain 3-meter intervals have even had higher grades. For example, 19 grams in hole 6 over 3 meters. You can see it's just close to surface in that image. And then hole 13, again, another 10.5 grams, about 20 meters below surface. The whole program was about 1,700 meters. The property comprises about 483 hectares, and it's about 5 kilometers from a paved highway. It's a really good location. It's really like it's in the foothills. We're not talking about steep topography here. Really easy to get around. There's dirt roads on the property, and most of the area is accessible. So the plan here is to go back and to continue with the work that we've been doing, and to highlight additional aspects of it. I think the two things I would mention here, there's several trenches that we haven't drilled under yet. That would probably be one of our priorities. Trench 1 is 55 meters of about 2.3 grams. You can see that on the far west side of the bottom left image. And then there's some trenches in between that have not been drilled. And we're looking to go back and drill those out, expand the deposit laterally along strike, and get a better idea of what's happening underground, and expand it hopefully at depth as well as we get more and more information. The program is not going to be focused strictly on drilling. I would say the most important thing as a geologist is to know the rocks. So we're going to go back and we're going to do mapping and more detailed mapping in the areas where we have less information, do more outcrop sampling. Most likely we'll be doing some more geochemistry, soil sampling, rock sampling, to get an idea of what is the trend beyond what is currently known. That way the exploration and the more expensive drilling would happen in an environment which is guaranteed to be more successful than to drill blind holes. And that's basically how I've done all of my exploration in the past, and that's how I'd be doing exploration here at Lucy. So we're continuing to develop the next stage of exploration on that, and that's something that is one of our catalysts coming forward. The next deposit is Metates. You've heard Alan talk about this a lot. Back in the day when Randy held it, and he was running the show, they did a PFS in 2016. The focus was to go towards the autoclave process. Really large scale operation here, 90,000 tons per day. But with large scale operations, they tend to have higher capex. They also require a lot more energy, water, and it requires a lot more equipment and stuff on the site. You do get a larger production on an annual basis, but when you look at the economics of any project, the best thing to do is to focus on something that is both economic but also generates a high return. And with Alan's technology, we've basically taken what was considered to be gold hosted in sulfides, and general practice would be going this autoclave route. Float the sulfides and then basically crush them, float them, and then put them in an autoclave and then get the gold on the back end. But what we've done here is, we have a standard technology that's, across the globe. It's called, oxide heap leaching, that we've, see several projects around the world that are doing it. And what we're basically doing is we're taking rock that has the gold in the sulfides, and we're going to oxidize it. So nature does this on its own. It takes the sulfides with the gold in it, and over millions of years, it's able to change those sulfides into oxides. And what we're doing with the proprietary technology is doing that on a time scale that's much shorter. And doing that basically allows us to have a much more economic project and something that gets higher returns, which I'll go through in more detail. So just a high level, Metates, as all of you know, it's almost 1 billion tons of measured indicated material. There's about 16.8 million ounces of gold and another 400 million ounces of silver in the measured indicated category. And on the inferred, we got 2 million ounces gold and another about 60 million ounces silver. The PEA focused on the first 200 million tons of higher grade material. That's in the massive intrusive. The grades there average about 0.76 grams per ton gold and another 13 grams per ton silver. And so it's, focusing on the higher grade material first. And then there's the optionality to go from the 15,000 ton per day starter project to expand it to something larger, especially given that it's a 30-year project. So one of the things that was done back in 2021, 2022 was they went back and they drilled a bunch of new holes to get an idea of how the metallurgy would work and how the technology would work on fresh core. They went back and they drilled PQ core, which is a lot larger diameter, versus what they had drilled in the past, which is HQ core. And when you drill larger diameter, you end up capturing a lot of the fine gold and material that would be missed that is actually in the rock and in the ground, that when you're running a real operation, that usually would be captured during the mining method. But under the PQ, we're able to capture a little bit of that additional gold that was in the fines. And we already saw an 18% improvement in grade on those holes, drilled next to holes that were drilled in the past. We did run a new resource, and that was one of the highlights of 2023. We put out a new resource based on this infill drilling that was done, and it increased the gold grade of the intrusive and intrusive breccia zone by 16%. Right, so you see here in the gold square, it's almost 200 million tons. Again, about 0.94 grams gold equivalent. That was part of the PEA, or will be part of the next stage. This is the same material that was part of the PEA without the new drilling results. So there's upside there in the future resource that wasn't captured in the PEA. So on to metallurgical test work and talking about the technology. So there's been a lot of work that's been done over the past 2.5 years, and under Alan and our team at the lab, our third-party lab in Vancouver, they've been doing a lot of work to understand the technology and figure out what is the best parameters to get the best oxidation and the quickest oxidation. And a lot of work's been done. Through that process, we found out what doesn't work, what does work. And the more important thing is what works, right? I'll flip to the next slide, but I'd like to give an example, right? So, you look at Thomas Edison, and Thomas Edison, set out as an inventor to create the light bulb. And as you know, or may not know, he did thousands of attempts. So he was attempting to make this, which is basically there's a filament in a vacuum, and he tried thousands of times to make this work. And when he found the right conditions to get one to work, he didn't go back and invent different light bulbs. What he did was he optimized it and then found what was the most commercial version of it, and then he started selling it. So the most important thing is to find what works and then go with it, continue to optimize it, and then bring it to the market. And that's basically what we've been doing in the lab. So the chart here that was put out in September, this is another look back of 2023. Our initial results here are in that gray dotted line, the initial cider column. That's what was the basis of the PEA. You can see the oxidation there for over 120 days. And then we went and we tested a whole bunch of different parameters. First of all, we got new core from the ground, like I showed previously. And, unfortunately, phase 2, most of the work that we did showed that the oxidation was still happening, which is positive, but it was happening at a slower rate. We then continued to do different tests, looking at different parameters. And over that period, we ended up finding the conditions that actually improved based on the original cider column work. So right now we have columns on the green line there that show 15% oxidation at 60 days, which is 50% faster than what was in the cider column, and then 300% faster than what was in the phase two work that we did. We've been able to focus on those parameters, and we have columns actually following behind right now on the same parameters, running over different time scales. And the plan for this is the columns that you see that are in green right here, we'll run those out to 180 days. And then we have two sets of additional columns that are currently being processed, and they'll run out to 60 days and 120 days. And we'll pull them all off at those markers. And those 3 data points, we'll flip them into the standard oxidation leach that's done globally with cyanide. And we'll look at what the recoveries are for each of them. And from that, you're able to determine what is the best number of days of oxidation, right? You know, maybe it's 180 days, maybe it's 120 days, maybe it's 100 days. And once we optimize what is the number of days of oxidation required, and then we can flip it on, it gives you a better idea of what is the time and the amount of working capital you need while the oxidation process is happening. And once you have that, that will be the basis of our PFS, which would be something that we're looking forward to doing in 2024. Just to give everybody an idea here, the cider column that is in gray there, you know, pre-oxidation, so pre-using our technology, and we just put it right on the cyanide, and we saw how much recoveries. We're getting about 35% gold recovery on that, and a 20% silver recovery. Once you use the technology on it, you know, we get 1.7 times higher gold recovery and 2.5 times higher silver recovery. So for gold recovery, that's been bumped up to almost 60%. And then on the silver recovery, we're just a little over 50%. And now that was just with the cider column test work. The work we're doing now, once those flip over, we're hoping that we'll get better results from the new oxidation leach regime that we're working on. So not only is in the lab, we're actually seeing, you know, the rock turning from being gray and sulfide bearing to, you know, turning more yellow and then orange and red, showing that it's more oxidized. And we actually still see that in samples that we take from it. Now, I know when you look at this, you're like, are these pictures of moon rocks? It's really difficult to see. But what these images are is we take really powerful microscope, and the ones that are in black and white, that powerful microscope's able to zoom in, and you can see that, you know, some of these pictures, the legends there, you got a legend of 50 microns, 100 microns, and another one 100 microns. So they're really zoomed in, and those individual dots that you see on there, those red dots, are actually samples that are taken by the microscope to determine what the chemistry of the mineral that we're photographing. And so the first one is the top one here. So that's marcasite. So the one on the right is marcasite, and you can see marcasite. I actually have a sample here that I can show you. And you can see there's this radial pattern that comes out of it. Okay, so this is an iron sulfide mineral called marcasite. There is several other iron sulfide minerals. There's pyrrhotite, which is this one here. And then there's pyrite, which is this one here. And then there's another form of pyrite, which looks like this. So we have different forms of pyrite, and how it goes is pyrrhotite is the most reactive. So this one naturally wants to break down on its own. Just in the air, over time, it'll start to oxidize and degrade. The next would be this sample here, which is the marcasite. And the reason is because all of these radial structures that you see actually shows that it's under a lot of pressure. And because it's under a lot of pressure, it tends to want to degrade and oxidize quicker. The next would be this conglomerate of pyrite here. You can see there's lots of surface area. There's little tunnels that you can go into. It's kind of a sponge, a honeycomb. And here, this would oxidize a bit slower on its own. And then the one that's the most stable would be the cube. So the cube is the most stable, has the fewest impurities, and so it would stay in this state. The surface would oxidize over time, but it would want to stay in this state the longest. Now what happens, and what we've seen in the lab, and you can see in these pictures, is the chemicals that we're using, the alkaline solutions, are actually breaking them down quicker than the atmosphere does. And so you can see in figure 1.8 that this hematite, which I mentioned is the most reactive, it has been completely replaced from iron sulfur, so FeS2, to Fe2O3. So that means that this is completely, in the image there, changed from this to hematite. And you can still see in that image in figure 1A the radial pattern in the picture that matches the one in 1B and the sample I held up. In figure 2, this is a larger example of what that would look like. This is obviously in the picture something very small, but this is easier to describe to the audience. And you can see in that image that I've highlighted these cleavage planes, and you can see that there's it looks like there's worms that have gone into the rock. And everywhere where the points are taken on the more white in the image, they're still pyrite. But everywhere in the crevices and in the little openings, you can see that it's already changed to hematite. So the fluid flows in the alkaline solution and it starts working on the inside and starts eating it away. And so it's much quicker, it's still reactive, not as reactive as a marcasite, but it's still very reactive, and it is eating it away and switching it to hematite. And then the last example is the cube, and so that's figure 3. And you can see in figure 3 that in the center of it, it's still pyrite, it's still FeS2, and the dots show that. But on the outside, you can see that it's already switched to hematite, and there's also a transition zone. So the sample that was taken in between had a little bit of iron oxide and a little bit of iron sulfide. But as you go into the center, it becomes more iron sulfide. And the best example would be, you go down to the marina, and there's chains that, block off from people falling into the water. And those chains on the outside, what happens is you see that the weather and erosion has actually started to make it crack, and it goes from like a gray color to a red color, and it starts to rust and fall apart. And you can see that in this image too. You can see the cracks around the core. And this is a standard shrinking core process. It's being eaten away from the outside in. And there's a little crack. You can see where it started to eat progressively faster down that crack. So any pre-existing crack will eat faster. And what ends up happening, just like if you took the chain from the side of the marina and you cut it in half, the inside is still steel, but the outside is becoming oxidized. And so you can see physically now at the microscope level that it's actually, the alkaline solutions are eating away at the minerals, the sulfide minerals. And so anywhere where it's gone from being an iron sulfide to an iron oxide, that process has basically liberated the gold that is in those minerals. And when we go to do the cyanide leach, it goes in and it's able to make contact with the gold, and then the gold goes into the cyanide solution, and then we're able to recover it. All right, so not only do we see in the lab that the results are showing that things are oxidizing, but even at the microscope scale, we can actually see what is happening, what's the actual process of the things changing. What is the basis of this work? And that goes back to, Alan talked a lot about the copper industry and the work that he did there. And copper oxidation of sulfides has been going on for greater than 30 years, and it's a standard process, which you can see on the left. We have basically taken that same process and we've applied it into our PEA, and we're planning to continue to move forward with that plan, where we're using single lifts on oxidation pad. The main difference here is we'll be using an alkaline system rather than an acidic system. But still, again, oxygen is added through forced air injection. And then once we have an oxidized material, then it would move to a standard heap leach. And so if I go to here, which is our simple flow sheet, you see the ore has been blasted and brought to the primary crusher. Then we have a 3-stage crush. Then it goes in and it's placed on the heap oxidation, which is the trapezoid in the center of the image here. And so this is where the actual oxidation would happen. Once the material is oxidized, then it'll be moved to the standard heap leach, which is on the right, and the next trapezoid to the right. And then after that, everything is basically standard what the gold industry has been doing for decades. And that's heap leaching oxide material and recovering the gold through Merrill Lynch and refining. So nothing changes there. The only difference with our process is we have a separate pad for heap oxidation. And you can see it right in our infrastructure. So if you look, you see the pit there with the concentric circles, and then just to the left of it, you see a blue rectangle. That is actually the oxidation pad. And so that's where the material is placed on there. And then as time goes on, we place material as we're mining and then remove material after it's been on there for whatever it's going to be, 100 days, 180 days, whatever we determine is the right number of days. And then that material is then placed into the heap leach, which is that pink body just north or just above. And you can see from that's exactly where the actual heap leaching and the gold is going to be recovered. So this is a little overview of our PA from last year. Nothing much has changed here. Obviously the metal prices have gone up since we've done this, but it's a much more compact project. Looking at around 360 million capex. We have the recoveries here at 70 and 75. Obviously, we're working in the lab to get to those targets. Gold production, it's about 112 over the first 15 years of gold production, and another 2.5 million ounces of silver too, which is about 150,000 ounces of silver per year, or gold per year. A pretty good strip ratio of 2 to 1. And then on the cash costs, 686, and with life of mine, all sustaining at about 750. In the end, using these conservative numbers for our price assumptions, we got about 1.4 million NPV at 5% and a 35% IRR. And again, this is just a phase one. There's still expansion potential. And given that it's 30 years, there's the potential to expedite this and to move more rock. But the PEA is done to look at what is the economic case and what is a very conservative process plan. For those that believe in higher prices, these are give you an idea of what the actual economics look like at different levels of gold and silver price, and the returns on those prices. Finally, the other part about this technology that's really interesting is that it's more green than what was the alternative that was out there. So as I mentioned, originally the plan was to do an autoclave. We've now switched to an oxidation process with a heap leach. And these numbers have been taken from Barrick Gold, from their sustainability report in 2019. Barrick's really great at being consistent on how they measure and take their data points. And you can see here, Pueblo Viejo is in Dominican Republic. That's an autoclave system. And Veradero is in Argentina, and it's heap leach. And it's exactly the same, other than the change in the process. They have the same types of vehicles, the same type of operation. The only difference is the processing methodology. And you can see here that water consumption is 1/10 when you're doing heap leach of what it would be on autoclaves. It's 1/10 less when it comes to power, CO2 emissions, and that's just more environmentally friendly. If you're using less power and you're using less water, that's a benefit to the community and the people around, and it's a benefit to the future generations too. The other important thing with our technology is the elimination of a tailings dam. Autoclaves, because you are doing flotation, there has to be a tailings dam. With any standard heap leach, you don't require a tailings dam. All the material that's mined is placed on a pad, and then it's leached, and it's encased in on the pad, and then all the material is basically covered at the end of the day, and then reclaimed. Whereas tailings dams, they tend to last hundreds of years and require a lot of upgrades and a lot of work to do to maintain their stability and the safety around a tailings dam, which, using our technology avoids all of those headaches. Like I said earlier, right now Metates is trading around $2 an ounce, gold equivalent. It's a really good opportunity. As the technology continues to advance and we continue to show to the market, what we already know inside, that the technology is working and it is oxidizing, the chances of re-rating is going to continue to grow. And there's an opportunity right now at today's prices to get in while we're still doing the work, and we're still highlighting to the market and bringing up the awareness of the work that we've already done. And then the last part here is the per share. You get more ounces per share at Chesapeake. So overall, each share that's purchased will give you a little more gold in the ground. And if you're a firm believer in gold and having gold in your portfolio, you'll get a little bit more gold than our peers in your portfolio when holding Chesapeake. So a lot of this I've covered through the past slides. I really want to just focus on the upcoming catalysts. So as I mentioned, we were looking at doing a follow-up exploration at Lucy. We're expecting to start launching that, and we're doing the budgeting and work behind that right now. But that's something to look forward in 2024. Also, the phase 3 oxidative leach, like I said, with the latest regime that is much faster than all the work that we've done in the past. We have other columns on right now, and we're looking to get those results. And on the back of that, we'll probably have a release updating the market on how all of the columns went and how they're going in H1 of 2024. And then on the back of that, once we get the results, then we'll be moving ahead on the PFS, which we're working towards having that by year end of next year. And then when you do a PFS, we've been doing a lot of the environmental work already at site, and that would be put into an application to continue to permit it and move Metates forward to get it to construction. And then the last, the resolution on San Vicente 3. Right now, it's still in the appeal process. I don't really have an update on that, but it should be coming out hopefully in the next little while. They're having a lot of challenges in Mexico, but it looks like the court system is still moving forward, and it's just a matter of time before we get a resolution on San Vicente 3. And that covers off on the press release, or sorry, the presentation here. Back to Kyle for questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Jean-Paul. You can come join me here if you'd like. Just as a reminder for anyone that has came in late as well, we are accepting questions in the bottom right-hand side of the screen, so feel free to ask them there. We did have some pre-submitted questions via email, though, Jean-Paul, so we'll start with those. First question is more about your qualifications, and are you going to be the full-time CEO now?
Yeah, so just about my qualifications. So I'm actually a geologist. I did my undergrad and master's at the University of Toronto. My undergrad and master's were focused on economic geology, and my master's was actually working in a clean lab looking at uranium-lead dating of porphyry systems down in Chile. So I have a lot of experience in chemistry and working in the lab, which is beneficial to the work that we're doing here at Chesapeake with our technology. After that, I ended up working at a junior company called Royal Nickel Corporation. I was there for about 4 years. Through that time, we had 27 holes in the ground. At the end of those 4 years, we had over 200 holes in the ground, over 200,000 meters. I was one of the project GOs. In a small company, you get the opportunity to do a whole bunch of things. I ended up helping out with the PEA for that project, the PFS, the feasibility. We also did an IPO during that time. One of my other projects in that was working with the metallurgical team and understanding the geometallurgy of the deposit. So not only understanding, where the minerals are and where the nickel was, for instance, for that project, but also understanding what the recovery was on various blocks within the block model, and incorporating what we're seeing in the ground as a geologist into the results we're getting in the lab, and building out a geometallurgical model, which gives you a better idea of actually what material would be recovered at the end of the day. So that was my experience there. I ended up going to a consulting firm, DeRouge Geological. I was there for about a year. They brought me on because of my experience taking projects from PEA to PFS. And so I worked on several projects with them. One was it's called Blue River in British Columbia. It's a tantalum niobium project that I helped get them from PEA to PFS. And the client there was Commerce Resources. So I did that, did a bunch of corporate development work for them too, bringing in new clients, as well as doing running some exploration programs in northern Quebec. I did my MBA, focused on natural resources, energy, and environment, specialization at the University of Alberta. And post that, I started at BMO Capital Markets, working with the equity research team. I worked under Andrew Kipe, which was the top analyst at the time, and then Jessica Fung, the commodities analyst and silver analyst. I covered gold, I covered silver, basically covering junior precious metal companies all the way up to producers. And funny enough, that's actually how I met Alan. I covered Silver Standard at the time. He was the COO at Silver Standard, and that was how I was introduced him to in the first place. Post that, I was at Hudbay Minerals for almost 5.5 years in the corporate development group. And while with that team, I helped to advance the story of several of the projects. I was part of the group that acquired Mason in Nevada. I also was part of the group that did the trade-off work and advanced the studies to take Snow Lake or Lolor from being a base metal deposit into a precious metal deposit with the refurbishment of New Britannia. I was part of the team that actually did the financing for that using a gold prepay to pay for all of that refurbishment. And then advancing Rosemont and advancing Constancia in various aspects too, but also developing the strategy of Hudbay as a whole. So a lot of experience. And then now I've actually been at Chesapeake just over 6 months. And yeah, so I think I have the knowledge and the experience to continue to advance Chesapeake. And I'm going to lean on a lot of the stuff that I've learned and a lot of the work that I've done in the past to continue to advance the story for our shareholders.
Great, thank you for that thorough, in-depth background. Can we anticipate any change in vision with you at the helm?
Yeah, so, I think, I'm going to be honest, Randy Rifle and his team did a great job. They got a wonderful project in Metates. It's a great project. It's a huge repository of precious metals. And Alan came along and, he has a proprietary technology that allows us to unlock that. So I really feel as though I'm living on the shoulders of two wonderful people, two great people that have really changed our industry and are still changing our industry. So I've been continuing to move Metates forward. As a geologist, Lucy gets me very excited. It's really a greenfields discovery. There's still a lot of work to be done. I saw a note out there, I think it was Gold Discovery Group, looking at it saying, the work that was done San Francisco under Randy Rifle back in the day, with El Sal, could this be the next one? We have to continue to do the work to see if this is the next success story for Chesapeake and success story for our team and our directors. The one thing I could say is, I've been with the team now for 6 months, and I have an exceptional team working with me. I'm very fortunate. A lot of them have good experiences. Alberto and his team have been around with Randy in the past for years. They helped with San Francisco. I've got Gary. Gary was with Cambior back in the day with Metates, so he has a really in-depth knowledge of the project and the work that was done, advancing it under the old regime of looking at autoclaves. And then I've got Navin, who's our CFO. He's really brilliant. I'm very fortunate to have him part of the team. And just generally overall, I was quite pleased, with the work that I've been doing and the time that I've been spending with them and the board.
Great. So just to bring it back to Metates for a second, is there any updates on the San Vicentes?
Yeah. So, typically how it works, it's in the process. It's with our lawyers and it's with the judge, and they haven't come to a decision yet. And still, it's a wait and see at the moment, unfortunately, for you guys. But as I can say, we've done work on it. We've done the same process that we've done in previous years. My belief is that we've done all the work correctly. Every previous years, we've actually gotten through the process and not had any claims removed from us. So, we have a strong case. We've had a third-party review, another legal group have a review, and we have a very strong case. So I'm very optimistic. But again, we have to wait till the judge comes out.
Thank you. And we have one more question via email. With Alan stepping down as CEO, is there going to be a slowdown on the metallurgical testing at all? How involved will Alan be in the company?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So actually, I'm heading to Vancouver next week to get together with the team. I've met them already once back in the summer. So I'll be with the lab team all next week, reviewing the work that's been done and the work that we're doing going forward. Alan is still involved. As many of you know, Alan is our second largest shareholder. He's also still on the board, and he's engaged with us on a consulting basis, supporting both me and the work that we're doing in the lab.
In regards to this technology, I'm going to the chat now here. Is this technology, is there an opportunity to have it as a royalty and generate income from this technology?
Yeah, I guess that's possible. There's definitely other parties, for example, in the copper space that have a technology that looks at extracting copper from chalcopyrite, and that's really their structure and their business plan. So there is an opportunity. I'm not going to say that we would not look at it, but there's still work to be done in the lab, and looking at sharing the technology with others, there's obviously risks, as many of you know. It's patent pending, and so there's still some work to be done there. But at some point, that could be a possibility that's looked at.
There's some chatter about some long-term shareholders in this call today, and Robert's asking if you could comment briefly on the stock performance.
Yeah, so the stock performance, it's been I guess decades, and over that time, there's, with any sort of exploration discovery, it typically follows the standard evolution. Okay, so when there's initial discoveries, the stock price tends to go up on speculation and what's out there. And then once you move into that next stage, which is, you're working through development studies, PEA, PFS, feasibility, tend to see a lull, I would say, in the stock. And that's somewhere I would say we've been in. But as we work through those studies and we come out the back end with regards to Metates, generally as projects are brought into construction, and the stock price starts to improve again. The other part of this is Lucy. So Lucy again is at the start of this, right? And you can see in our share price, once we put out the announcement for our discovery back in early October, that our share price performed quite well actually on the back of that. And the work at Metates and the work in the lab is not, I would say sexy and exciting, and it takes time. But whereas exploration work at Lucy tends to get a quick return, so we do the work and then I can put out results to the market. And so that's kind of what we're doing in the interim while Metates is moving in the background through the metallurgical work, through the PFS, and through resolving San Vicente 3. The stuff at Lucy is going to be kind of front and center. And so I'm hoping and I'm working towards having more good holes come out from Lucy to improve the outlook for everyone.
Graham was wondering if you could actually elaborate further on the Lucy drilling program for 2024 and how many drill rigs will actually be turning.
Yeah, so obviously there's permits that are required, and under our current permit, we're allowed to do some work still, and so I would say that the first program, the first going out there, will like I mentioned earlier, focus on drilling under trenches that have not been drilled under yet, doing some infill drilling in areas where there's distance between two holes, but then expanding either to the southwest or the northeast along strike, and then doing a bunch of holes to see where we get an idea of what direction is dipping. Is it dipping to the south or is it dipping to the north? It's still early days, and that's actually what's exciting about this. Is it's so early that having those kind of drill results right at surface that's open pittable in a future operation, it really doesn't take much for it to have a critical mass and to get people excited and get people behind it. And so the idea is here to do a bunch of drilling that could add value to some areas where we already have some information, but also start to expand and ensure that the next round of drilling that we do on the back of that is really looking at where we can expand further and add more ounces in the ground.
I didn't mention the second part to Graham's question actually. What's the full drill season down there?
So right now it's still good. It's still good until the new year, and it does get a bit rainy at times, but we're in a location that's in the foothills, and so it's a lot more shallow, low-lying areas that we're not talking about high topography or anything here. It's quite easy to get around and move around, and so it's a lot better to work actually and do exploration.
So with 22 million in the bank, what's the timeline for the next raise? Not in the near future, I'd imagine. Comments.
Yeah, so we've got a good runway here, obviously. Like I mentioned, the focus is we're going to continue to do the lab work, and the cost of that's quite minimal. And then advancing to the PFS, once we get the results back, we do have a good runway for that as well. And then doing some exploration. The great thing about exploration in Mexico is it's relatively cheap compared to exploration that I was doing in other countries globally. And so your dollar goes a little bit further, and you get a bit more meterage on each dollar that you spend. So we're in a really good position. A lot of peers are probably envious of this position, and I'm going to use it to get the most value out of the properties that we own.
Okay. Bill came in a little late, but I believe we touched on his questions. So that's it. Unless anyone else has questions in the chat, I will leave it or throw it back to you, Jean-Paul, to close things off with any closing remarks.
Yeah, thank you everyone for attending. I'm hoping that you enjoyed the presentation, and I'm looking forward to having follow-up calls with each of you and continue advancing Chesapeake, the Metates, and the Lucy story for our investors and for our audience.